Alright, let me tell you a story from the land of our ancestors. This tale is about two brothers, a dying king, and a kingdom in turmoil. Listen well, for there are lessons to be learned. In a kingdom not far from here, there lived a great ruler named King Themba. He had ruled for many years with both strength and kindness, and the people loved him for it. But now, as the sun set on his reign, he lay weak and dying in his royal hut. By his side sat his firstborn son, Prince Nkosi. He was a gentle soul with eyes that shone with wisdom beyond his years. King Themba looked at his son and spoke in a weak voice, "Nkosi, my son, come closer." Nkosi leaned in. "Yes, father, I am here." The king coughed and said, "The weight of the crown is heavy, my boy. It will test you in ways you cannot imagine. Remember, a true king must have the strength of a lion and the heart of a dove." Nkosi nodded, trying to memorize every word. "I will remember, father. I will make you proud." King Themba smiled weakly. "I know you will, my son. But beware, for the path to the throne is not always straight. Your brother Sizwe, where is he?" Nkosi looked around, noticing for the first time that his younger brother was absent. I don't know, father. He should be here." Outside the royal hut, in the shadows of the night, Prince Sizwe was indeed absent. But he was far from idle. In a secluded clearing, he stood before a group of warriors and elders. "My friends," Sizwe's voice boomed, "our king grows weak, and soon a new ruler must take his place. Who among you believes that strength alone can protect our kingdom?" The crowd murmured in agreement. One warrior stepped forward. "Prince Sizwe, we have heard of the threats from neighboring kingdoms. We need a strong leader to defend us." Sizwe smiled, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "And you shall have one. When my father passes, I will ensure our kingdom remains feared and respected. No enemy will dare cross our borders." As Sizwe rallied his supporters, back in the village, an old woman named Namvula sat by her fire. She was known throughout the kingdom for her wisdom and her gift of foresight. As she stared into the flames, a young warrior named Thandi approached her. "Elder Namvula," Thandi said, bowing her head in respect, "I seek your counsel." Namvula looked up, her eyes clouded with worry. "Ah, Thandi, I have been expecting you. Sit, child, for there is much to discuss." Thandi sat cross-legged before the old woman. "Is it true? Is King Themba dying?" Namvula nodded solemnly. "Yes, child, and with his passing, a great storm approaches our kingdom." Thandi's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, elder?" "I have seen it in the flames," Namvula said, her voice low. "Prince Nkosi has the makings of a great leader. His heart is pure, and his wisdom runs deep. But I fear his gentle nature may be his undoing." "Against Sizwe, you mean?" Thandi asked, her hand unconsciously tightening on the spear at her side. Namvula nodded. "Sizwe is ruthless, child. He will stop at nothing to claim the throne. And there are many who believe his strength is what the kingdom needs." Thandi stood up, her eyes blazing with determination. "Then we must help Nkosi. He is the rightful heir, and he will be a just king." "Be careful," Thandi, Namvula warned. "The coming days will test not just Nkosi but all of us. Go to him. He will need friends like you by his side." As dawn broke over the kingdom, news of King Themba's worsening condition spread like wildfire. In the marketplace, in the fields, and in every hut, people whispered and wondered about what would come next. Two farmers, Zola and Mandla, argued as they tended their crops. "Sizwe should be our next king," Zola said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Have you heard about the Mbalo tribe to the north? They say they're planning to attack us." Mandla shook his head. "Rumors, my friend. Besides, Nkosi is the firstborn. It is his right to rule." "Right," Zola scoffed. "What good is right when our enemies are at our doorstep? We need Sizwe's strength to protect us." In another part of the village, a group of women gathered at the well. Among them was Zandile, an elder respected for her knowledge of healing herbs. "I fear for our future," one young woman said as she drew water. "Sizwe speaks of war and conquest. Is that truly what we need?" Zandile sighed. "My child, strength without wisdom is like a river without banks. It destroys everything in its path." But Nkosi, another woman, chimed in, "He is kind, yes, but can kindness defend our borders?" "Do not mistake kindness for weakness," Zandile replied. "True strength lies not in the ability to take life, but in the wisdom to preserve it." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Thandi made her way to the royal hut. She found Nkosi sitting alone outside, his head in his hands. "My prince," she said softly. Nkosi looked up, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Thandi, my friend, it's good to see you." Thandi sat beside him. "How is the king?" Nkosi shook his head. "Not well. The healers say. They say he may not last the day." Thandi placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Nkosi, but listen to me. The kingdom needs you now more than ever." Nkosi looked at her, his eyes filled with doubt. "Does it? I hear the whispers, Thandi. Many believe Sizwe would be a better king." "Those people are fools," Thandi said firmly. "Sizwe may have strength, but you have wisdom. Your father chose you as his heir for a reason." "But what if they're right?" Nkosi asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What if I'm not strong enough to protect our people?" Thandi stood up, offering her hand to Nkosi, "Then become strong, not like Sizwe with cruelty and fear, but with justice and compassion. Come, your people need to see you." As Nkosi and Thandi walked through the village, they saw the division among the people. Some bowed their heads in respect, while others turned away, whispering among themselves. They approached the village square, where a crowd had gathered. Sizwe stood in the center, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the people. "My father's time is coming to an end," Sizwe proclaimed. "And with it, the old ways must also end. We need a strong hand to guide us through the dangers that lie ahead." The crowd cheered, but not everyone. An old man stepped forward, leaning on his walking stick. "And what of justice, Prince Sizwe? What of the wisdom that has guided our people for generations?" Sizwe's eyes narrowed. "Old man, your time has passed. In this new world, only the strong survive." Nkosi could not stand it no longer. He stepped forward, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "Enough, brother." The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to Nkosi. Sizwe's face twisted into a sneer. "Ah, brother, come to join us at last? Or were you too busy weeping by our father's bedside?" Nkosi stood tall, his eyes meeting Sizwe's without flinching. "I was by our father's side, yes, learning the wisdom he has to impart. The wisdom you seem to have forgotten." "Wisdom?" Sizwe scoffed. "What good is wisdom against a spear?" "More than you know," Nkosi replied. He turned to address the crowd. "My people, I know you are afraid. I know you worry about the threats that lie beyond our borders. But let me ask you this, what are we protecting if we become the very thing we fear?" A murmur ran through the crowd. Nkosi continued, "My father, King Themba, ruled with both strength and compassion. He taught me that a true leader doesn't just fight for his people, he fights for their future. A future of peace, of prosperity, of unity." Sizwe laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the air. "Pretty words, brother. But words don't win wars." "No," Nkosi agreed, "they don't. But they can prevent them. They can build alliances, foster understanding, create a world where war is not necessary." As the brothers faced each other, tension thick in the air, a cry went up from the direction of the royal hut. "The king. The king is calling for his sons." Nkosi and Sizwe exchanged a look, years of rivalry and resentment passing between them in an instant. Then, without a word, they both turned and ran towards their father's hut. Inside, King Themba lay on his bed, his breathing labored. As his sons entered, he opened his eyes, a small smile touching his lips. "My boys," he whispered. "Come closer." Nkosi and Sizwe knelt on either side of their father's bed. The king looked at each of them in turn. "Sizwe, my strong one," he said, "your strength is a gift, but remember, a king who rules by fear will find himself alone when he needs his people most." Sizwe bowed his head, unable to meet his father's gaze. King Themba turned to Nkosi. "And you, my firstborn, your kindness is your strength, but do not let it blind you to the harsh realities of ruling." Nkosi nodded, tears in his eyes. The king coughed, his strength fading. Listen to me, both of you. A kingdom divided cannot stand. You must find a way to work together to balance strength with wisdom, courage with compassion. With a final effort, King Themba reached out, placing one hand on each of his sons' heads. Promise me, he whispered. Promise me you will protect our people and each other. We promise, Father Nkosi and Sizwe said in unison. With a final smile, King Themba closed his eyes and breathed his last. For a moment, the hut was silent save for the quiet sobs of the two brothers. Then, slowly they stood and faced each other. What now, Brother Sizwe asked, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. Nkosi took a deep breath. Now we honor our father's last wish. We find a way to work together for the good of our people. Sizwe nodded slowly. It won't be easy. No, Nkosi agreed, but nothing worth doing ever is. As the brothers emerged from the hut, the news of King Themba's passing spread quickly. The people gathered, their faces a mix of sorrow and uncertainty. Nkosi and Sizwe stood side by side, facing their people. Nkosi spoke first, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. People of our great kingdom, today we mourn the loss of a great king and a beloved father, but even in our grief we must look to the future. Sizwe stepped forward. My brother speaks true. Our father's last wish was for us to unite, to lead together. A murmur of surprise ran through the crowd. Thandi, standing at the front, couldn't hide her smile. Nkosi continued, in the days to come, we will face many challenges, but we will face them together with the strength of Sizwe and the wisdom our father imparted to me. And to all those who would threaten our people, Sizwe added, his voice firm, know this, we stand united. We are strong, we are wise, and we will defend our home. As the sun set on that fateful day, the kingdom found itself at the dawn of a new era. An era where strength and wisdom would walk hand in hand, where two brothers, once rivals, would learn to rule as one. And so, my children, that is the tale of the dying king and his two sons. Remember its lessons well, for in unity lies true strength, and in wisdom lies the path to everlasting peace.